right? One of the things I've always thought about Hitler is that, people, you have to admire Hitler. That's the thing. Because he was an organizational genius. The thing that doesn't stop people from being Hitler, people don't refuse the ambition to become Hitler because they don't have the genocidal motivation. They don't follow that pathway because they don't have the organizational genius. They've got the damn motivation. And if you take 100 people randomly and you talk to them, and you really talk to them, you'll find that 5% of them would take their vengeful thoughts pretty damn far if they were just given the opportunity. And in fact they do, because they make life miserable for themselves and often for their family, and sometimes for anybody they can come near. And then maybe another 20% of people have that bubble up in them on a pretty damn regular basis. So, you can have some sympathy for Cain. If you don't have any sympathy for Cain, then you're not. See, Cain and Abel also, they don't just represent two archetypal types of being. They represent, so it's not like you're Cain and you're Abel and you're Cain and you're Abel. It's like you're half and half and you're half and half and you're half and half. It's something like this. This is two different potential patterns of destiny. And you don't manifest one purely and the other zero. It's like it's like the line between good and evil that runs down the human heart. It's exactly the same idea. And maybe you're more like Cain or maybe you're more like Abel, but there's still a little Cain in you no matter how able you are. And maybe more than a little. And probably more than a little. And if you watch your fantasies, which I would very much recommend, you'll find that they show you dark things about you that will shock you if you allow yourself to be conscious of what you're thinking. So it's a good time when you're having an argument with someone, especially someone that you love, to just watch the pictures that flash in the back of your mind. That's part of, let's say, coming into contact with what Carl Jung called the shadow. And the shadow is the manifestation of Cain. That's a perfect way of thinking about it. And one of the things that Jung said about the shadow, because Jung was not someone you mess around with lightly, he said the human shadow has roots that reach all the way to hell. And Jung meant that. That's no metaphor for him. Now, he might not have meant it in the same way that a fundamentalist Christian from the southern U.S. might mean it. But I would say that Jung meant it in a way that's far more terrifying and also far more true. So, and Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. So there's Abel burning his offering away there. And he's in this sort of relationship with, let's call him the archetypal figure of culture, the archetypal father. And it's something he respects. That's the thing. It's an indication, the posture is an indication of respect. And then there's Cain in the background. You see, his face is in shadow, and he's jealous of what's happening here. And he's going through the motions, perhaps, and maybe God just doesn't like him. We don't know. But he's going through the motions, and he's not very happy about it. And that's actually a phrase that you could carve into many people's tombstones as an epitaph for their life, which would be, went through the motions but wasn't very happy about it. This is really an interesting one, I think. I mean, so I don't know what God's doing here exactly, but he's helping ignite the sacrificial flame. And that's kind of an interesting idea, I think, because, let's say that you have an impulse to make a sacrifice. You think, well, I should change this about my life. Well, it's like, where does that come from, that impulse? It's just, it manifests itself out of nothing. So, or you came up with it. Well, you might want to stop thinking about that, thinking so surely that you come up with your own thoughts. You don't come up with your damn dreams, do you? They just happen. And God only knows where they come from. They come from your brain. Oh boy, that's a sophisticated answer. They come from your unconscious. Well, that's not much better. At least it's somewhat better. But there those amazing dramas take place in the theater of your imagination at night. You don't even understand what they are, and yet they occur night after night. And those things, dreams, they can contain wisdom that it just staggers the person who has the dream once they get the key to the dream, once they remember it. It's like, oh, look, you just revealed a bunch of wisdom to yourself that you didn't know. Well, where'd that come from? Well, you don't know. How in the world can you dream up things that you don't know? That's a tough one. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point in this lecture series, because there are some reasonable things that can be said about that. But, the idea that there's something that's not you. Jung would call it the self. Carl Jung would call it the self, which he thought of as the totality of your being across time and space. It's something like that. And that, each second that you exist is a slice of the self manifesting itself across time and space. And he thought of the self as partly the voice of conscience, whatever that is, that helps guide you when you have to make a difficult decision. And a difficult decision might be, well, what do I need to sacrifice? How do I need to discipline myself, right? What do I need to forego? Well, how do you figure those things out? Well, this picture is trying to put forth the idea that perhaps if you had established the proper relationship with God the Father, and we've talked about what that might mean, then he would help figure out how to get the sacrificial fires burning so that you could stay in a proper relationship with him across time. Well, if that's such an unreasonable proposition, what's the alternative proposition? Well, this isn't working out very well, that's for sure. Cain seems to be doing it, I don't know what it is. It's as if he thinks he can only do it himself, or maybe he wants only to take credit for it, or something like that. He's not in this grateful, let's say, and inquiring, grateful and inquiring posture, because that's what a prayer for posture should be. It should be grateful and inquiring, and grateful is, thank God things aren't worse for me than they are. And you should be grateful about that, because they could be a lot worse than they are, man. They can be so bad. And inquiring would be, well, I don't really know how I could make it better, but I'm open to suggestions, man. If I can figure out how to do it, I'll try it. That's the humility and the inquiry. That's a humble inquiry. How could I make things better? It's something like that. And that's like, what sacrifices do I need to make in order to make things better? That's a good question to ask yourself. You could ask yourself that every morning. What sacrifice do I have to make things better? You can decide what constitutes better. How about that? Then it's not even as if it's being imposed on you. Come up with your own notion of what constitutes better. Try to make it sophisticated. It shouldn't just be better for you, because that isn't going to work very well, right? You're just going to fall downstairs if you do that, because you have to live with other people. And besides, it's stupid anyways. What are you going to do? There's nothing you can even say about that. It's so... That's the attitude of a very badly behaved, hyper-aggressive 2-year-old. And I mean that technically. And so you could ask yourself, well, how I have this day that lays itself out in front of me. What thing could I let go of that's impeding my progress, that if I let go of would make my life better, my family's life better, my culture's life better, my being better? And then that would give you something to do for the day, wouldn't it? And to justify your miserable life. Because you need that. That's the whole point of the first story of Adam and Eve. What do you have? A miserable life. Okay. What am I going to do about that? Well, if you just have a miserable life, you're just going to suffer stupidly and get bitter about it. That's what happens to Cain. It's like, well, how about not doing that? Because that seems to just take a bad deal and make it worse. How about making a sacrifice and seeing if you can please God and put being on track? God, that'd be something to do. What could be better than that? What could possibly be better than that? Well, that's why it's archetypal, man, because nothing's better than that. That's where it tops out. So when you can do that every day. You'd have to do it in a little way, because well, what good are you, You're not going to go and bring the socialist utopia into being in one fell swoop.